下面我们有请 François Gray 来告诉大家，有请 ，Welcome。
谢谢你，女士们、先生们，大家好。我叫 François，在日内瓦大学公司工作。可是我的中文不太好，所以我要说法语，行吧 ？Bonjour, vous parlez français？ 啊 ？Non？ 不能？可以英文好吗？我们试一试英文。So I'm excited to be here, excited to tell you about what we are doing for co-making in my city, Geneva. Geneva, Switzerland. It's a very small city compared to Shenzhen, only a few % of the population of Shenzhen. But it's quite a famous city. It's famous for several things. It's famous for very expensive watches. Rolex? No, I don't have a Rolex. Maybe you have a Rolex? It's famous for very expensive chocolate. I love it, yeah. But it's also famous for private banks where very rich people can, put their money and then buy expensive watches, expensive chocolate. But Geneva is famous for something else, completely different. It's famous for making peace. It's famous for bringing the nations of the world together to solve problems together and stop war. And it's famous for that for many historical reasons. And I just want to briefly mention some. Do you know this symbol? Who recognizes this symbol? Probably nobody, because it represents an organization that no longer exists called the League of Nations. The League of Nations was started just after the First World War. It was the vision of the leaders of many nations how to prevent that there should ever be another world war on our planet. It was a time of great optimism. This is 100 years ago, actually, that war ended, and 1 year later, the League of Nations was created. And for a while, they solved many problems. But after a while, things didn't work out so well. So in 1936, this is a picture from the League of Nations in Geneva. So they settled in Geneva, and that was the beginning of Geneva becoming a very international city. And here is a picture of the Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. He is complaining to the League of Nations because the year before, Italy, under the fascist leader Mussolini, invaded Ethiopia. And 1 year later, 1937, the Japanese invaded China. It was a great catastrophe. And 1 year later, Germany invaded and annexed Austria and Czechoslovakia. And 1 year later, 1939, a Second World War begins. So the League of Nations failed. But already at the end of the Second World War, even before it finishes, nations got together and they created version 2.0, which everybody knows today, the United Nations. And the United Nations, of course, the headquarters is in New York, but actually many of the agencies and a lot of the activity is still in Geneva, where the League of Nations started. This is the Palace of Nations. It was created for the League of Nations. It's now the Geneva headquarters of the United Nations. At the time it was built, it was the second biggest building by volume in the whole world. Only the Palace of Versailles was bigger. It shows how much Switzerland, a neutral country, wanted to support peace in the world. So today, if you visit Geneva, there are hundreds of international organizations and NGOs all over part of the city that we call the International Geneva. Actually, it's one of the most international cities in the world. Almost 50% of the population is from somewhere else. Here's a few statistics. There are dozens of international organizations in Geneva, hundreds of NGOs, tens of thousands of people are employed in that. That's roughly 10% of all the jobs in Geneva directly in the international activity in Geneva. But I said Geneva is very small, so 10% of Geneva is actually also small. And it's a reminder to all of us, United Nations, it's very famous, very prestigious, and everybody thinks United Nations so powerful, but actually it's so small. It's so much, to give you an idea, roughly the budget every year, $3 billion. The US Department of Commerce, a budget about $14 billion and maybe 40,000 people just in one department. I'm sure one ministry in China is bigger than most of the UN, right? So in perspective, the UN is small and fragile and needs help. Because guess what? We are living in a period again where there's a challenge to this approach of international peacemaking, where there seems to be a lot of concern about maybe things breaking down again. So a year and a half ago, the United Nations launched a new campaign, how to get the whole world to solve some of the problems that are creating tensions between nations. It's called the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, right? These are 17 goals for the whole planet. We want to reduce poverty, reduce hunger, but also more equality between men and women, sustainable cities. We want to solve the problems of pollution in the oceans, on land. It's a very, very ambitious program for the whole planet. And I just emphasize here that one of the key goals is partnership. We have to work together, private sector, public sector, academia, international organizations. Otherwise, we never solve all these problems. We have 15 years to do this. This is a challenge for 2030. Let's see how far we can get. So for us in Geneva, at the University of Geneva, we saw this as a great time to bring together the maker spirit and maker world with these grand global challenges. And just to give you an idea, although these challenges sound very abstract, and you think, how can I help? It's not clear. Behind each challenge, there is some very concrete targets, such as this one for reducing the global maternal mortality. And for all these targets, there are very quantitative goals or indicators. So there are quantitative things that need to be measured, and there are targets that need to be achieved. And this is a space where we need technology, we need new solutions. Because actually, and the United Nations admits this, for many of the things we need to measure for the SDGs, we don't have the technology yet even to measure it. Maybe 1/3 of the goals, the indicators, we don't know how to do it. And even when we do know how to do it, we often only have very expensive equipment that doesn't scale to use in all parts of the world, even in developing and quite poor countries. Also, being able to measure change is one thing, but then we also need to make change. We need to actually find methods to achieve the targets. And then, really important, when we make a breakthrough and we want to change the world, we have to be humble. We have to be able to assess, is what we are doing, is it really having the impact we want? And is it maybe having some negative impacts as well? We need to be able to assess this. So these are the SDG challenges we have. So to tackle this, we created an SDG solution space, a maker space, right in the heart of international Geneva. And here I show you on a plan of Geneva, you see right here is our maker space, and it's right next to the World Trade Organization, the Palace of Nations. Here's the UN High Commission for Refugees. So all these international organizations, they can just walk across the street to our maker space, and they do. People come, they have coffee, they discuss projects with our students, and then they work on these projects together. So these are projects that we carry out at University of Geneva and at Tsinghua University as part of something called the Geneva Tsinghua Initiative. I'll come back to that in a second. Here is the SDG solution space. It's just an old archive space. And here's a key person from United Nations telling our students about challenges. They may come back from like World Health Organization. They go out to very challenging places, a bit like Andy here, but there may be Ebola. And they see, wow, how could we solve this problem? Maybe we need some new measuring technique. They come back, but they don't know how to do that. They are not technologists. They don't know the solutions. And so we get our students to talk to them and then think about solutions. And I'd like to emphasize one thing here. Our students are from all kinds of backgrounds. Some are engineers, some are scientists, but some are political scientists. Some are psychologists. Some have a background in business. And we think that it's very important to mix these backgrounds because a solution is not complete unless you think of all the dimensions. Sometimes you don't need technology. You need just to change a policy, or you need to change the psychology of a community so that they behave in a different way. So that's why we call it a solution space. It's more, in a sense, than a maker space. So we emphasize team-based solutions with teams of interdisciplinary students. We are very influenced by the famous psychologist Piaget, Jean Piaget. He was a professor at University of Geneva for 50 years. He opened up the field of child development psychology, and he said such an important thing. He said, you know, to really learn something, you have to try and solve a problem that nobody has solved already. In our universities, in Europe and China, I think we are always challenged because we're always trying to solve problems our professor already knows the solution. Here in the solution space, we're trying to solve problems where nobody knows the solution. That makes the students so much more eager and work harder. But of course, they have ideas that's not always good, so there has to be feedback, there has to be, you know, criticism, and we bring in experts from the United Nations to review what our students do. This man, he is the Director General of the United Nations in Geneva. He comes into our makerspace to talk to the students and hear about their solutions. It's really cool to be in a place where we can interact like this with the international community. So the Geneva Tsinghua Initiative, it's a vision for really solving the problems of the SDGs with challenge-based learning. We want to do high-impact projects, mentorship by experts from the international organizations, and we are connecting partners in Geneva and in China. Why China? There's a few reasons. One is with Tsinghua University, Tsinghua has a main campus in Beijing, but it has also an amazing graduate campus here in Shenzhen that does very good challenge-based programs such as Open Fiesta, and we want to collaborate here in Shenzhen on technology, on the latest techniques that we can use for making solutions for the SDGs. Another reason, to be frank, is that China is a model for the future of sustainable development. This country is trying to become more sustainable in energy, in the environment, and if China can succeed, it will give hope to many other nations around the world. If China doesn't succeed, we are all in trouble. Okay, so we have many education activities that we have set up in the last 2 years. We have a master's program, 2 years, one in Geneva, one at Tsinghua. You get a Master of Science and a Master of Public Administration. We have a summer school that lasts 2 months in Geneva, Beijing, and Shenzhen. We have an innovation exchange for professionals who are doing social innovation to learn about international Geneva and about the innovations going on in China. We have an SDG accelerator where we help student teams that have a great idea go a little bit further towards a demo where they can get startup funding or start an NGO. We have hackathons that we do throughout the city. Once a year, maybe 1,000 people are involved in 30 hackathons around Geneva with International Geneva. And we have online coaching of student projects called the Open 17 Challenge. And if you join the Open 17 Challenge, any student from anywhere on the planet can join. You can then win a place in our summer school, maybe go on to the master's program. This is a program for everyone, not just Geneva, not just China, it's for the whole world. What sort of challenges are we talking about? Well, here's one example from this summer. Our students were working with the World Health Organization and the International Telecommunications Union on 6 challenges related to mobile health, a program called Be Healthy, Be Mobile. Everything from how to encourage people to wear helmets when they ride a bicycle or a motorcycle. It's a big problem in China, right? You don't want to wear a helmet, but actually the accidents that are caused by not wearing a helmet, it's a very serious health issue for your whole country. Crowdsourcing tobacco control, making people aware that they should not smoke in certain areas where the government has said that there's no smoking. Getting children in schools to lead healthier lives, and so on and so forth. Detection techniques for early stage cancer, for diabetes, for hypertension. So our students work on these projects, and just to give you one example, this is a project that started in a hackathon. It was then in the summer school. You can see actually these are some of our students meeting people from all over Shenzhen at the Shenzhen Open Innovation Lab, And the project was all about how to help blind people to go from A to B in their city using a belt, and in the belt there's a haptic sensors or haptic actuators that tell them which direction to go. So combining some advanced software for getting exact directions of sidewalks and crosswalks with this belt. And we've been working on this for a while. We now work with Seed Studio on studying how to industrialize this, because that's very important. It's great to have a good idea, but then you have to think how to make it cheaply enough that it's accessible to blind people, not only in Switzerland, but in China and other countries. So we're so excited to be working with the infrastructure and ecosystem here in Shenzhen on these projects. But you know, it's not enough for just some students in Geneva and China and others who join. We need makers around the world to help with the SDGs. We really need to connect. I want to remind you again, the SDG 17, partnerships. We really need to collaborate. This week, I spent the whole week with an amazing group of people at something called GOSH, the Gathering for Open Science Hardware. Like 100 people, like 100 Andes, women and men who do crazy things with technology for science and sometimes invent things that could be really important for sustainable development. GOSH is an example of how to partner across the world. We're also launching this network of labs called United Labs for Global Goals here in Shenzhen, in Africa, in India, North America. These labs have one thing in common. They will share their space with students working on SDG projects, so the students can do the project in the best possible place for their project. So if you want to know more about the Geneva Tsinghua initiative, the SDG Solution Space, the link is there. These are some of our students from China and around the world in front of the Palace of Nations. Sometimes, you know, in the UN, you think about it, it's like a lot of people talking in big meeting rooms like this, right? And I think the challenge now for all of us, for all makers, is we have to stop talking about making a better planet. We have to just make it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, François. Please have a stay, have a stay. 咱们还是开放2个问题吧。观众朋友一定要立马举手啊，让我看到你。哦，好。咱们后排的观众是吗？在后排的那位观众。
没有问题吗？
要不这样吧，接下来我想要请出咱们本次论坛的负责人 Monica， 她有话跟 François 讲，有请 Monica。
Hello， 大家好。其实不只是François，其实我是想要跟各位今天来到 Maker Faire 论坛的朋友们讲几句话。也许这边大家现场有在前几年的 Maker Faire 见过我，今年是我第3次在柴火负责Maker Faire 论坛的。Sorry, would you like to have a here? I just want to say something to the audience very quickly and thank you. 其实今年是我第3年在柴火工作，然后负责 Maker Faire 的论坛的策展。我其实这个是没有安排的，我是临时很感动，我就在下午一整天听来非常，我刚刚其实都快要哭了。跟小新说，今年虽然不是我主持，但是我很希望上来跟大家说几句话，就是也许大家在几个讲者的稿子里面可能常常听到 seed， 可能常常听到柴火。我其实很担心大家觉得这个是我们硬塞进去的广告，但其实不是。我跟大家解释一下为什么。其实这个论坛呢，我们是在柴火里面把我们，包括我，还有我们的创办人 Eric， 还有包括我们非常努力每天接待大家的小天使 Violet， 还有我们的合作伙伴里面，其实今天站在台上9位朋友呢，是我们在这1年当中。每一天一起合作的伙伴，或者说他们来到深圳来找我们一起合作，做一些不一样的事情。我们是被他们的故事感动到了，或是被他们在做的事情感觉的，这是一定要跟大家分享的事情。所以1年1度的 Maker Faire 呢，我们邀请他们来跟大家分享这个事情。有些人可能是离我很近的，比如说世薇姐是我在台湾的朋友，红豆就是刘香怡，她是我每天去跟她喝咖啡的朋友，也有到很大的，比如说。 有一些我没有见过的，比如说 Lila 是上海来的朋友，石炯老师是我们合作的老师，还有像 François 还有 Andy 呢，他们是我们偶尔见到的人，但是刚好这一次他们全部都来深圳参加 Gosh， 所以我就赶快来跟大家聊一聊。所以我是希望在 Maker Faire 呢，大家要想的是，不只是我们在楼下或者外面看到的机械，或者看到的电子技术或者是产品。更希望看大家透过这样子的一个论坛，去想说我们身边他们用这个技术去做了什么样不一样的事情。阿宝谈到文化，红豆谈到了建筑，或者是谈到贫穷的地方，或者是怎么解决world of the world's problems。这个是我们希望透过这个论坛传达给大家的东西。然后我只是很希望上来跟大家说谢谢你们的参与。然后我们也 I just want to thank you so much for becoming a part of us. We're so lucky to have you guys in town, to have you fly in from Shanghai and Ningbo and Taiwan and just around the corner for all your support. We want to invite you back. 然后还有另外一件事情呢，是我们希望在明年，我们非常其实欢迎大家，因为这些都是我们认识的人。但是这个舞台，我们是更希望是让深圳其他的朋友们呢，可以一起来参与。所以我们也希望明年可以开放，让大家来报名，来论坛跟大家分享他们的故事。所以谢谢大家的参与，然后我们非常谢谢团队。
好，谢谢玛丽卡，谢谢玛丽卡，
好，谢谢大家。And thank you to all the speakers.
那我们接下来把今天下午所有的讲者再次请上台，好吗？